Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today we've got a special guest from New Brighton Capital, and that's Mike. How you going?
G'day, Alex. Yeah, no, doing really well. I know we only, met a couple of weeks ago, or spoke a couple of weeks ago, but been following you for a long time, and you produce great content, and very happy to be on your show.
Oh, thanks, mate. Well, I appreciate that. And you guys are doing a lot of work in the self-managed super fund space, which we get so many questions about. So I'll bring up your website just quickly for people to check out,
Yeah, sure.
newbrightoncapital.com. And it would be remiss of us not to mention that this is a pretty highly regulated space, I guess, mate. So, guys,
Yeah, for
there's the
sure.
ASIC website here. I'll just bring that up quickly. They've got some guidelines around self-managed super funds. The ATO have got some guidelines there, and the ATO have even got some cryptocurrency specific guidelines on the self-managed super fund space. So, Mike, I'm sure you're going to talk about all that with us today anyway, but
Yep.
give us a bit
Dive
of
in
an
a little bit.
insight into your background.
Yeah, sure. So on the crypto side of things, I dove in around about early 2013. So before that, I was actually in the financial planning game. Left there around 2011 to just be a kind of a full-time investor. And I was actually in Miami with some Forex traders in early 2013. And one Friday afternoon, I stumbled across Bitcoin, and it made so much sense because at that time because I was trading from Miami, I had accounts in Europe, in Australia, and obviously in America as well. And it was an absolute nightmare trying to move money around and set up new accounts. And I was spending a bit of time in South America as well. And then they shut down my accounts because I thought it was all fraud. So when I found Bitcoin, like many people, kind of went down the rabbit hole and literally stayed up for days and read as much as I could. And when I came back up, started telling everyone about it. And the guys I told about it, like these are successful guys in all ranges of trading, from forex and options and running funds and things like that. And every one of them said no. So for different reasons, either it was a scam, or they didn't want to put their reputation to it, or they just didn't understand it, or they were just on a good winning thing anyway. They didn't have the time or effort or desire to learn anything else. But I basically said then and then that no, you guys are all wrong, and this is serious. This is going to change the world. Pretty much been full-time Bitcoin ever since.
Yeah.
After a couple of years, I started writing a few articles, published on bitcoin.com, and ended up being running the sales side of things for bitcoin.com over there across 2016, 2017. And while I was there, just started with the idea of what I wanted to do with New Brighton Capital. And here we are today.
It's crazy how often you hear stories like that. People in the know that turn a blind eye to Bitcoin, I guess. So, New Brighton Capital, mate, talk about super funds in general, and self-managed super funds have been in the news a lot this year, particularly in Australia, I guess.
Yeah, all the financial industry has been getting massive slaps all year for the regulation and how they've been rorting people and all the rest of it. But just to move aside from that for a moment, a self-managed super fund, or SMSF, is literally just an entity that allows you to control your super instead of paying a fund manager or giving it to a retail super fund for them to run it themselves. And so it's kind of like the difference between just having a company to run it, but you're the fund manager for your superannuation. And a lot of people can get intimidated for certain reasons. It's either too hard, or they think it's too expensive, or too complicated. And our goal with New Brighton Capital is really just to dissolve those issues and make it really quick and simple, at a really good price, and satisfy everything as far as the ATO regulations, and all looking after your tax and compliance and all that back end stuff that you really don't want to deal with. And so our clients can really just focus on building their portfolio, whether that's in crypto or other assets as well, because obviously you're not tied to crypto with our fund. It just gives you the option to be exposed to crypto as much as you like, as well as anything else that's allowed within a normal self-managed super fund.
Yeah, and I guess that's probably the question we get a lot is, can you just put a little bit of your super fund in Bitcoin? And geez, the most volatile asset class on the planet, guys. I'd never recommend anyone put their entire super into crypto, or look how volatile altcoins have been. But it's certainly a question we get a lot of. How can I put a small percentage maybe into Bitcoin and just leave it for the next 10 or 20 years? Is that something you get asked a lot?
Yeah, and obviously, yes, very volatile, very risky. But a lot of the time, I try and educate our clients on the risk side of things. It's always relative. So, like, compared to what? Compared to having your super invested in, you actually don't know. Because most people, if you ask them what they're invested in, they might say, "I'm invested in the medium growth fund at AMP."
Yeah.
that doesn't count. It doesn't count as actually knowing what you're invested in. And so even just having the knowledge, starting to understand the risks that you're currently taking with your own super before entertaining moving into anything else, I think is really important.
Well, that's what started my story, I guess. I had that high growth fund as an 18-year-old or 21-year-old, and the GFC hit, and I said to my dad, do the fund managers still get paid when they lose half your money? And he's saying, yeah. I was thinking, geez, that's an easier job than the weatherman.
Yeah, that's right. It's heads they win, tails you lose. Yeah. And so, one of the main reasons why people, I suppose, do actually have an SMSF, and one of the main reasons why they don't, is questions about the cost. So when you actually have money in a retail super fund, the more money that you have in, the more actually you pay in fees. A lot of people don't realize that you do pay fees in a retail super fund, but you do. It's generally around 1% to 2%. The benefit of having a self-managed super fund is whether you've got 50 grand or 500 grand or 5 million, those costs are literally just the cost to do the paperwork and the accounting to run the fund. So the costs are pretty much the same. And there's literally a crossover point where you're crazy not to actually have a self-managed super fund. And even if you are paying, even a couple of $100 more throughout the year to have the opportunity to be exposed to something like cryptocurrency, might not be a bad idea.
So what has that threshold been, as you said? And that's something that's been in the headlines a lot, how that's changed. It used to be millions of dollars, self-managed super fund, otherwise it's not worth it. But that's kind of changed that thinking a bit this year.
Yeah, so in their media, if you have a look around, you normally see the figure 150 to 200 grand to set up a self-managed super fund. That is 100% incorrect. But the reason they put those numbers out is because generally when people were setting up self-managed super funds, they were wanting to buy an investment property within that fund. And if you're buying a property within your SMSF, you can't just put down 5%, get a 95% loan. You've got to put down either up to 30 or 40%. So those upfront costs are a lot more. And you also can't negative gear within a self-managed super fund when investing in property. So you do need a lot more if you're looking to buy property. And also the costs to actually set up used to be really high. They still are with a lot of the mainstream providers, around $10,000. And so if you've got 50 grand, well, do you really want to be spending 20% on setup costs?
Yeah.
But the way we set things up, because we do everything online, everything's streamlined, we don't offer financial advice, so we don't charge you for financial advice. Yeah. And so you can be set up for $600, anywhere between $600 and $1,200 to be set up, and you're off and away.
Yeah. So for anyone that's listening, what are the guidelines they need to be aware of, or how easy is that to set up? You guys take care of all that now?
Yeah, that's right. So normally if you were going to be setting up a self-managed super fund, you'd have to go and see your accountant or financial advisor. They'd charge you thousands of dollars. It could take weeks to actually set up. And signing it, they've got to send it in the post, and you've got to sign this and that, and understand. It is a bit of a headache. And I actually started, this service on the back of my own experience trying to set up my own super fund to buy crypto in. So everything that we do, within New Brighton Capital on the SMSF side of things is exactly what I'm doing for myself and my family. So what we set up, it's an online portal. It takes 5 to 10 minutes to fill in the form online. Within 24 hours, you've got all your establishment documents to be set up. We apply for your ABN and tax file number as well. And that form that you actually receive within 24 hours is an electronic document, so you electronically sign. So it's literally click, sign here, date here, click, 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 click. You're all done within a day, and you can actually take that document to the bank to actually open up your SMSF bank account 90% of the time the next day. So we really have streamlined the entire process.
Fantastic. So for those people that are sitting at home, maybe thinking about doing this, it really is just that online form, and within 24 hours of that, you can have some of your self-managed super into some Bitcoin or cryptocurrency if you wish.
Yeah, that's right. There are some time frames, because obviously once you set up your bank account, which you can do obviously the next day, for you to receive the rollover from your existing super fund can take a couple of weeks for you to send that form over to them, and for them to actually send that rollover into your new bank account. But that's just waiting for them to do their thing, and obviously for the ATO to do their thing. But the bulk of it and everything that you really need to do, you're done and dusted with a 5 to 10 minute form, and 24 hours for us to send you all the docs.
Fantastic. And as you said, it used to cost thousands of dollars to set this up. I believe there's no upfront fees. Is that right, Mike? Or
Yeah, that's right. So there are a couple of ways that you can set up a self-managed super fund. One is having an individual trustee, and the other is a corporate trustee. So I won't get too into the weeds and what that is, but as most of your viewers, I suppose, would be familiar with the concept of being in business and having a company, or being a sole trader. And so you can kind of be, a sole trader SMSF or a company SMSF. And the reason that you would have a company SMSF is if you were pretty sure that people were going to be moving in and out of that fund, quite a bit, because all you need to do is change the name of the directors of the company that runs, if you want to be changing people. Whereas if you've got an individual trustee, you've got to change the names of all the documents all the time. So if you're, so I'll let people do their own research, because I can't give specific financial advice on what's right for you. But we do have a blog online which goes through the differences and really does outline the two options. And so if you're going for an individual trustee, we've got a $0 upfront process where clients can actually, there is a $600 establishment fee, but that gets paid from your super after your existing retail fund rolls over your funds to your new self-managed super fund bank account. So there's nothing out of your pocket. It gets paid for by the super fund.
And that would be sole trader, someone like myself, who's just looking to set up their super and just leave it for the next, 40 years or whatever it is, and not really touch it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Cool.
So another reason why you would have a corporate trustee is if, for example, someone who's in the fund passes away. If you've got a corporate trustee, there's no, all those assets just stay the same. You just change the name of the director of the company. But if it's in an individual trustee, those assets need to be sold, and then there can be a tax event and then redistributed. So that's another reason why people might, if you're a lot older, or people in the fund who, just planning for that, that's where a corporate trustee is actually a lot more beneficial.
Fantastic, mate. Well, what else do you think it is really important for people to know? What other takeaway messages would you like for them sitting at home today watching this?
Well, it's really, I suppose, just about understanding the risk that you currently have with, your own situation. And if we're going to, I suppose, talk about risk, most people's two biggest assets are their home and their superannuation. So, and most people have a mortgage, so that home is owned by the bank. And the reality is that the majority of the retail super funds, the major shareholders, are the banks. So consider the risk that you're taking at now. And I suppose I'd like to maybe just touch on what's happening around the world right now. So it's really easy to think that we're nice and protected in Australia, because things are okay. We've got a bit of inflation. We don't really like the banks, and they're doing some bad things on the regulation side of things. Yeah. But we can wake up in the morning and we've got a pretty good idea that what we've got in the bank is pretty much is what we had in there yesterday, and it's pretty much going to hold its value. But even right now, we've got places like Argentina or Venezuela last week had a 95% devaluation of the currency. Like, that's crazy. And that's now. And so when people think, oh no, that's not really us, we're really far away from it. Well, what's actually happened since the global financial crisis? We used to have, I'm not sure if yourself, your viewers remember the Australian bank guarantee, which would actually guarantee up to $1 million in your bank account if the banks actually went under. After the GFC, they changed that to be 250 grand. And then they also put a limit on how much the banks were liable for. And that limit also takes in consideration the subsidiaries of those banks. So, for example, it's not just Westpac, it's Westpac and St. George. And so if you average out those liabilities and what you could be up for, that thing that used to be $1 million bank guarantee is now only worth maybe a couple of $1,000s if you average it out across all the people. And so just something to take note. And it's not about putting everything into crypto, just getting a little bit of exposure, whether it's cryptocurrency, art, or precious metals like gold. At least having some assets exposed to those kind of areas that you control and you own, I think is.
I think the other measure that people aren't aware of is the bail-ins as well. And that's what started a Bitcoin rally back in 2013, was when Cyprus did a haircut and just took money from everyone's bank account. That money is no longer yours in a bank account, which is scary. That's right.
And actually, a continuation of that, from $1 million to 250 grand when it's only worth a couple of grand. In February or January, February this year, the Australian government passed legislation that allowed bail-ins in Australian banks. So if you're not sure about that, just Google Australian bail-in. And look, there was no coverage in the media with this. Really just has been snuck in behind there. So if your main assets, being your house and your super, are exposed to the banks, and the governments have literally done everything they can to de-risk themselves from the banks over the last 10 years, again, it's a warning sign. And I'm not saying that things are going to be turning south straight away and we're going to be crashing. I'm actually pretty bullish. I do a lot of, I'm very involved in trading still, and I'm pretty optimistic on the Australian market, at least in the short to medium term. But at least, again, knowing the risks, knowing the game that you're playing, I think is really important.
And the more uncorrelated, diversified assets you have, I guess, the better as a general investing rule over the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, touching on that, so with the ETFs that may or may not be approved moving forward, I think one of the most important parts of that is the fact that because all global markets are so financialized more than ever before, they're all moving in the same direction more than ever before. So, fund managers around the world are having a really hard time trying to diversify themselves. And that's why having assets like, cryptocurrencies are actually going to be really useful for them. And you can actually play the same game within your own super fund, just by having a small exposure to the crypto side of things. And, riding the wave on what I think, and you probably do too, is an inevitability.
Fantastic, Mike. Well, I know you've got a very special discount for our premium members, which I'll post in our group, guys. But you've also got a discount for all our followers as well.
Yeah, that's right. So anyone who actually goes through and signs up to become a client of New Brighton Capital, like an ongoing client for the services, you'll be getting $100 off the establishment fees just by putting in Nugget in the referral code section of the form there. So Nugget is the word of the day.
Fantastic. We'll have that in the description as well, guys. But again, $100 off, no upfront fees. Thanks so much for joining us today, Mike, and thanks for the discount.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, thanks for having on.
Cheers, guys.